The common conception about test screenings goes something like this. The studio has a great movie on their hands, but then they round up the dumbest fucks in all of the land, the dumber the better. They show them the movie and get feedback like,
I like turtles.
Then the studio panics.
Oh shit, we gotta get turtles.
They totally change the movie, and when it comes out, people are like,
The fuck is up with all the turtles?
except for that one guy. And yeah, I guess on the whole, that is basically it. But let's take a closer look. Why have test screenings? Well, as a filmmaker, I find value in them. The kind of movies I make are supposed to appeal to a broad audience. If you make movies just for you, then it might be a different story. As a filmmaker, it's easy to get a little lost. If it's a comedy, for example, you will have heard the same jokes a million times.
Banana? I don't even know her.
Wait, what? And you have no idea if it actually works. Or if a scary movie is actually scary, because it certainly wasn't scary when you shot it.
Blah.
As the filmmaker, there might be details or story points that are super obvious to you because, you've read the script.
Well, it's right there. She doesn't pick up the fork because it reminds her of the devil.
The funny thing is also that you'll see the movie very differently if you're seeing it with others. It can work if it's just one new person in the room. Suddenly, all the flaws of the movie stand out. I don't know why that happens psychologically, but it does. Test screenings also give valuable information to the marketing department. If they know that, for example, Caucasian women in their 20s love the movie, then they know when and where to advertise it.
Movie.
So what's the process? Well, random people of various backgrounds and different ages are recruited, often online on certain sites where you can sign up for it. The screenings are sometimes held some ways outside of Hollywood to avoid more film-savvy crowds.
In the third act, you really should have Chekhov's gun complete the arc of your main protagonist.
Okay, but did you enjoy the movie?
Well, Reddit hasn't seen it yet, so,
Before the screening, a guy up front tells the audience that they're the very first audience in the world to see this film. This will be said no matter how many times the movie has been screened before. You're always the first audience seeing it, because you're special. Then you screen a shockingly low-quality version of the film. You see, when you edit a film, you don't cut the full-quality video files. That would be too hard on the computer, so you use lower-quality proxy files. And then when the movie's done, those are swapped out for the full-quality files. But for test screenings, you use the proxy files. You also have temporary sound effects, temporary music, since that will be created once the movie's more complete, and the music is often taken from other movies' soundtracks. Visual effects will also be very temporary. The test screening version might look like this, while the finished film looks like this. And that's if you're lucky. Sometimes there can be scenes that are just storyboards or even just a black screen with white text that tells you what happens. As a filmmaker, it feels pretty fucking awful showing such a bad version, but it is what it is. Afterwards, the audience gets to fill out a questionnaire. It has questions about what they thought of the characters, what they thought of the beginning, the ending, favorite scenes, least favorite scenes, and so forth. The most important question is what they thought of the movie. You can rate it excellent, very good, good, fair, or poor. You calculate the percentage of people who rated it either excellent or very good, and that's your score. The score can mean different things for different genres. An average horror movie will have lower scores than your average action movie, for example, because a lot of people just don't like horror no matter how well made. The second most important question is how likely are you to recommend the film you just saw, because good word of mouth is important. At the end of it, you might have a focus group. You get 20 or so people to stay behind and talk about the movie. This, if you ask me, is where the danger is. These people go, okay, we're here to find problems with the movie. So they think long and hard to really try to find problems with the movie.
The hat on that one guy wasn't very tall.
The rest of the group don't want to be the dummies that missed the problem, so they all pile on, going, yeah, that was definitely the problem. I was just about to say that. Then the guy running the show says, raise of hands, who here agrees that that thing was a problem? Everybody raises their hands, the studio sees that, and freaks the fuck out. I prefer to just read the comments on the questionnaires afterwards, when it's individual opinions. But even then, you might need to do some interpretation. They might say, we didn't like the scene where the best friend was killed by the bad guy. Okay, but did you not like it because it was a bad scene, or do you simply have negative feelings about it because you were sad to see the best friend die? A lot of times the audience might feel the effects of a very real problem, but they can't put their finger on exactly what that problem is. So the danger is just taking the feedback at face value. You have to do some detective work to make sure you're fixing the right thing. Sometimes people who have been to test screenings talk about it, even though they're not supposed to. Then you might read online that a certain movie tested horribly and that it's an awful mess, and all of the internet will go, ha, I knew that movie was going to suck. Well, here's the thing. They are test screenings. It's the time to test things out. Sometimes there are things in your movie that you're unsure about, but you figure let's put it in front of an audience to make sure it's shit before we take it out. Sometimes you have double test screenings in theaters right next to each other, where the two audiences get two different endings to see which one plays the best, and so on. So when things leak from a test screening, it might be from a shitty version with a terrible ending. So reading about a terrible test screening means nothing. Likewise, there are some movies that don't have test screenings for the public. Say you're doing a very anticipated big movie or something where you really don't want any spoilers to come out. Then you can do internal test screenings for employees at the company or people that you know, like fellow filmmakers. That might, of course, skew the results a bit.
So what did you think? Yay!
So even when you hear good things coming out of a test screening, it doesn't mean shit. So yeah, test screenings aren't necessarily as bad as you think. Except when they are.
Not sure what the lesson here was, but I learned that animation takes way too much time, even if it's simple and ugly. So, yeah.